This is the Royal York Hotel and is Toronto's castle. Join me for one night inside not only one of our country's biggest hotels, but one of the most storied, where I'll cover everything from one of the most intimate dining experiences I've had to date, to all the stories that led to its completion, and so much more. Last summer, I started a series to stay at as many of Canada's Grand Railway hotels as possible, all of which were built in an era when passenger trains ruled the Great White North. The Jasper Park Lodge, the Banff Springs, the Palliser Hotel in Calgary, the Bessborough in Saskatoon, the Fort Garry in Winnipeg. I stayed at all of them, including here in Toronto for 2 nights at the Royal York. But this one's different. This is one of the Grand Railway hotels of Canada, so I'm getting there the exact same way the guests did a century ago when the hotel first opened, which makes perfect sense. This video is sponsored by Seed, and before I tell you about how everything went wrong, I want to tell this story from the start. In the year 1858, Toronto was just an afterthought in Canada. Montreal and Ottawa were above and beyond Canada's biggest cities, and the railways of Canada were still in their infancy. But the Grand Trunk Railway would build Toronto's first station that year, and by 1873, something bigger was inevitable, and they would build on top of the existing station with a design featuring a trio of towers along the side of the station facing Lake Ontario, with the central tower stretching over 100 feet high. An absolutely beautiful design. They truly don't make them like they used to, and this station would have 3 tracks entering both sides of the station. This station would open on July 1st of 1873 as the largest and grandest passenger rail terminal in all of Canada at the time of its completion, and over the next 2 decades would come to host the Canadian Northern and Canadian Pacific passenger trains in Toronto, making it a union station as it was a union of the railways under one roof. By 1899, with 3 railways sharing the station and over 100 trains departing the station daily, it was clear that Toronto needed something bigger, and in April of 1905, the Canadian Pacific and Grand Trunk would agree to construct a brand new union station together. But for the next decade, almost no progress was made since they rarely agreed on anything, and World War I did not help by putting a strain on any materials necessary to construct it. Grand Trunk went bankrupt in 1920 after basically every railway in Canada except the Canadian Pacific would dissolve into a newly formed Canadian National Railways, and now with a more cooperative partner in CN, the Canadian Pacific took charge, ensuring the station's completion. The new station was officially opened on August 6th, 1927, and although the building itself was never completed fully until 1930, if you ask locals in Toronto today, they'll all tell you they're still working on the station to date. It's a never-ending construction project that never seems to get finished. But the station's exterior was composed of smooth Indiana limestone with 22 columns marking the official entrance inside, and inside lies the Great Hall, featuring an arched 26-meter high ceiling, and that ceiling was engraved with all the cities that were connected to Toronto by trains leading out of Union Station. Now, that old Grand Trunk Union Station saw its final train depart in 1927 and would finally meet the wrecking ball in 1934. A real shame, absolutely beautiful station, but the present site of that Grand Trunk Station is now home of the UP Union Pearson Express, which offers direct service by train from Union Station to Toronto Pearson Airport. And long before the Canadian Pacific even completed today's Union Station, they were planning to erect Canada's newest and grandest railway hotel to date. Across the street from Union Station stood the Queen's Hotel, as you see here. Built in 1843, the Canadian Pacific had long wanted the land that it stood on, but one of the owners absolutely refused to sell it. But when he passed in 1925, 2 years before Union Station was completed, his other co-owner wasted no time getting a deal done with CP. The Canadian Pacific would purchase it, and the Queen's Hotel was swiftly demolished, and between 1927 and 1929, construction on a new state-of-the-art luxury hotel would commence. She would be composed of the same Indiana limestone used on Union Station, with a signature letter H design to allow maximum sunlight into all the windows of the time, crowned with dormer windows atop the striking central tower, rising to a total height of 400 feet, 28 stories high, and would earn the title for not just the tallest building in Canada, but the entire British Empire at the time of completion. And if you think this design looks familiar, you're not wrong. The same architects actually designed the Chateau Laurier in Ottawa, Fort Garry in Winnipeg, and the Hotel Macdonald in Edmonton. Oh, and the Hotel Vancouver? Well, let's just say that some creative borrowing may have taken place during the design process, because when when you compare Toronto's and Vancouver's railway hotels, built by two different railways, two different architects. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Somebody definitely got inspired by somebody. On June 11th of 1929, the hotel would complete and be named the Royal York, named after the town of York, just outside of where the hotel was built, and she would open her doors to the public, boasting over 1,000 guest rooms, Toronto's first indoor swimming pool, and would complete at a modest cost of $16 million. And upon opening, things looked pretty bright for the Canadian Pacific and their new hotel. It was an instant success, but the crash of 1929 was only 4 months away and would plunge Canada into the Great Depression, and with that, train ridership would come to a screeching halt well into World War II, and with that, so did the hotel's occupancy. But following World War II, ridership actually rebounded, and Union Station was seeing upwards of 100 trains arriving and departing every day. And only a few years later, in 1955, when the Canadian Pacific debuted what would soon become Canada's most famous train, the Canadian, a stainless steel streamliner with scenic viewing domes atop the train, like you see here, leaving the Royal York in the distance. Her debut in April of 1955 would spark ridership even further, and in 1957, the hotel would begin an expansion, adding a third wing, pushing its capacity to over 1,400 rooms, and it would complete 2 years later in 1959. But following the completion of the Trans-Canada Highway 3 years later in 1962, now meant that you could drive coast to coast across Canada without ever needing a train. And by the 1970s, demolishing Union Station was actually a real topic of conversation. But in 1975, the city would declare the station a National Historic Site, which would then protect it from any future demolition. And the decade that followed would actually see the Royal York undergo a massive renovation, including the cleaning of the facade. And although the 1950s saw all of Canada convert to diesel locomotives, the decades of steam locomotives powering up outside the station and hotel, releasing soot into the air, would begin to build and stain the hotel's exterior, as you see here. And following some extensive elbow grease to clean it, she was back to her 1929 look shortly after. And over the decades since, the hotel would serve countless passengers arriving from Union Station, from JFK to Queen Elizabeth. I mean, the hotel was even a personal favorite of Canada's most popular Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, who spent more nights here than at any other hotel in Canada. And fast forward to here in 2025, that brings us to our experience inside Toronto's castle. Our story begins here in Vancouver. We'd board the train, heading east for the Rockies in Jasper, with a 2-night stop in Jasper at the town's railway hotel, the Jasper Park Lodge. We'd reboard and continue through the heart of the prairies into Winnipeg, Manitoba, my birthplace, for a stop at the Fort Garry Hotel. After that, back on the train for the next 2 days through the forests of Northern Ontario, destined for Montreal and the Chateau Champlain. But an on-time arrival into Toronto was 2 p.m., and we would arrive 7 hours late and miss our connection, leaving us stranded overnight. But luckily our tickets were a guaranteed connection, and Via Rail would end up putting us up for 1 night across the street inside the Royal York. So we'd make the short trek across Front Street, stepping inside the lobby, and this is where the hotel's grandeur immediately hits you. From paintings of some of the other railway hotels from the Banff Springs, which we stayed at last year, to the Chateau Laurier in Ottawa, which will be the final railway hotel on this stop with Bella, or the Chateau Frontenac, which I'm taking my mom to after that, and even this awesome painting of the hotel being depicted from the view of the CN Tower, as you see here, hanging out right by the elevator. And after that, we would head upstairs. Although yes, my Fairmont Gold status did not get us any upgrades here, but this was our home for 1 night. Not bad. Oh my god, we could set the camera up for me to do a belly flop and you could see it from here. And like the old saying goes, when life gives you lemons, make hollandaise. And we dressed for the occasion. And considering that we got a comp dinner at one of the nicest spots in all of Toronto, thank you very much, Via Rail, we were excited. Now the hotel has a few dining options here, including the Clock Tower Cocktail Lounge, which if you have ever heard somebody say, "Meet me at the clock," in Toronto at least, this is the place that they're referring to. But the library bar was above and beyond our preferred choice. It's a really cool environment to dine in, and they've crafted a few feature cocktails here organized by science fiction, folklore, poetry, all sorts of genres. Now, if you're new to this whole Railway Hotel Across Canada series, this whole trip is a giant celebration for Bella's birthday. And she started things off with the Strawberry Fields drink over a One Rock. I, on the other hand, I don't drink personally, so sparkling water was. And for main, she had the grilled salmon with rice pilaf and a sous vide sauce, which is basically an onion cream sauce. For myself, after pretty much eating primarily protein on the train for the past week, I was craving a bit of comfort, so I went with the signature burger and fries. But to be honest, I wasn't overly surprised because I learned last summer that they have a rooftop garden. Most of the produce is grown here in-house. And come on, you're going to have a great finished product if you're growing things in-house, going farm to table. And how could I forget the special touch that the staff did for Bella's birthday? All in all, last time was great. This time was even better. And if you get an opportunity, the library bar, whether it's for a One Rock or a culinary delight, it's an absolute must-do here in downtown Toronto on Front Street. Now, upon first glance, the hotel is absolutely visually stunning. But from the beginning of this series, I've asked myself the question, what exactly made a railway hotel so grand a century ago? From ballrooms built for royalty, hosting King George, Prince Philip, Queen Elizabeth, or even Jim Carrey, who made his comedic debut at the Royal York on stage here in the Imperial Room, these hotels not only dictated the social life of the cities that they were built in, but would affect growth patterns for a century to come. From the signature clean walls to the sharp pitched roofs, you knew immediately upon seeing it that this place was built for luxury. And now we're in today's video sponsor, Seed. Seed is a clinically validated 2-in-1 prebiotic and probiotic that is designed to help with your digestive health, your immune health, heart health, skin health, and most importantly, your ability to absorb nutrients. I've spent my entire life traveling for hockey and now for the series, and when my mother of all people said, you have to try Seed and was hyping it up, it was an absolute no-brainer. I mean, she is the ultimate influencer as far as I'm concerned. The Seed DSO1 delivers 20 times the live bacteria compared to any of your leading greens powders, and is specifically formulated. Reduce abdominal bloating after just 2 weeks, help with any digestion or stomach issues, provide relief from your everyday gut discomforts, whether it's gas or bloating, reduce intermittent constipation in 2 weeks, and my personal favorite, improve my skin health for a little bit of extra glow, and most importantly, absorbing the nutrients from the food that I'm eating, preventing toxins from reaching my body, and ultimately flushing out really expensive supplements. And if you are still on the fence about having Seed help you the same way that it helped my mom and myself, we're gonna make it even easier than ever before. Seed and I are partnering up. We're going to get you 25% off your first month when you go to the link in the video description. You click that link and you use the code TRAV25, that is my name, TRAV25, for 25% off your first month. And what are you waiting for? Get Seed today. And thank you so much to Seed for sponsoring this video and making this series possible. And with that, it was off to bed, where our train would await us in the morning. Now, this morning was a bit of an early start, especially after our late arrival last night. But we would check out the hotel, head downstairs, and across the street back into the station. Now today we hold business class tickets to Montreal, and with that comes the business lounge. And as Bella was still quite frankly shaking off the cobwebs from the early start this morning, but once we made eye contact with that espresso machine, things started to look up. And speaking of, I couldn't help but notice and quite frankly be impressed by these really cool murals that Via put up above the espresso machine, paying tribute to the golden era of rail travel. And whether we're talking about the first quarter century when steam locomotives would power up outside the Royal York Hotel, or the post-1950 era when diesel-electric locomotives took over and actually powered the Canadian heading west of Toronto, back in a time when, believe it or not, you could still see the Toronto skyline from the skyscrapers and glass box buildings that dominated today. And after we polished off a few of those espressos in the business lounge, which you can absolutely tell by Bella's excitement, we would head out of the lounge, through the great station, and board our train destined for Canada's most cultured city in Montreal, going from the second last railway hotel that the Canadian Pacific built here at the Royal York to the last one in Montreal, the Chateau Champlain, just like they did a century ago. This series is my love letter to Canada and the railways that built it. From Windsor Station in downtown Montreal to the Chateau Laurier in Ottawa, from downtown Winnipeg to the Palliser in Calgary. I'm traveling across Canada, rewinding the clock to capture an experience and share the stories of over a century ago before they're forgotten forever, along with some hidden gems nestled along the way. Have you ever stayed at the Royal York? Do you have a story about it? Whatever it is, drop in the comment section below because I would love to hear it. And hit that subscribe button so you don't miss next week's video in Montreal at the Cheese Grater, better known as the Chateau Champlain, or any of the upcoming videos in the series. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.